look, say what you want about Falcon, Winter Soldier, and Zemo. They're definitely going to have their run-ins with authorities, and they're going to clash with the government, but they are definitely not going to run afoul of the fashion police. My boys are looking fresh as Welcome to The Watcher. I am your cult leader, Tom Bott, and I just watched episode 3 of The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I preferred it to last week's episode. I didn't drag as much, and I felt like... Actually, I found it kind of an interesting episode in general, because as much as we're kind of paying lip service that this is, a buddy cop dynamic, it's sort of leaning very much more into the kind of detective crime elements than I expected. And in this episode, this is sort of the middle of most of those stories where we're kind of, weaving a few more plot threads and we're introducing a few more characters that could come into play towards the big payoff of who done it kind of a thing. And again, normally when you do that, there's kind of a mystery involved. And the mystery is... There's not really a mystery at the moment. I guess the question that we kind of have is who is the power broker at the moment. That's probably the biggest question looming in the show. And it's interesting because compared to something like, say, WandaVision, where we had a million different questions, we don't really have that for this, which I'm kind of grateful of, to be honest. But it's interesting. We'll get to it in a minute. Of course, this episode is named after the power broker, who we discussed briefly last week. But let's just get into it and we'll see where we go. So our episode actually starts with John Walker and Lamar Hoskins, our US agent and battles there, which I'm not going to talk about them now because honestly they were barely in the episode. I expected them to be in a bit more. I thought we might get a bit more friction between our warring factions of Captain America's and Bucky's, but no, not really. They were barely in this. They got a lot of time last week, so I guess that was the reasoning. And there's plenty of other characters to introduce and factor in here, so I'll talk about them at the end. But as I said, they didn't have a major kind of role to play. So where we left the show last week was that they were going to go to talk to Zemo, and what I really like about Zemo as a character, and a lot of people kind of wrote him off after Civil War. They kind of felt like, he wasn't a great villain. I actually love Zemo. I think he's not a flashy villain like we often have in the MCU. He's more manipulative and intellectual. He's not the sort of guy that's going to throw on a big mech suit and start fighting the bad guy. He just kind of is a master manipulator, and I find it very interesting. And they kind of have stayed true to him, at least in the opening they certainly have, and they kind of went more comic book to him later on, but I felt like they still did that within the constraints of the character they created. So, of course, they both go to talk to Zemo, but Falcon is like, Bucky is like, don't come with me, you're an Avenger. He's not going to like you. Now, of course, this could have been part of his ulterior motive of what his plan for Zemo was, as we'll see. And I really liked the playing off of Zemo and Bucky, our former Winter Soldier, because of course he'd been used by him in the past, and they went. I'm so glad they didn't go this way. I was kind of worried, and I said last week that they might, he might have some code words that will set Bucky off, and because of that, he'll break out. But thankfully, that wasn't the case. Now, again, I don't know if you could fully say the scene and the breakout scene was, or at least lived up to its full potential. I feel like you could have had a better kind of action scene there, but it was fine. It wasn't very flashy, which is fine. I just could have possibly been some missed potential, or some wasted potential, I guess. So, yeah, in other words, they play off each other, and they play on their history, which I really liked. So, basically, Zemo's like, at least you were not conscious for most of your imprisonment. And he does apologize to him. He's like, I'm sorry, you were just the only person I could use, and it wasn't anything personal. But, again, with the character like Zemo, you kind of have to take every kind of thing he says and wonder, is there an ulterior motive there? And obviously he says, like, if you are only coming to me because you're desperate, you do need me. And then from there, it's kind of interesting because we obviously had the big prison breakout scene, which we knew was coming. But they made such there wasn't a big deal made of it at all. It was like, it reminded me of, Bill and Ted, where they're like, we just have to remind ourselves to do this. Oh, we already did. And it is a kind of fun scene that plays into like the differences between Sam and Bucky and the friction between them. But he's basically like, hey, what if we were to break Zemo out? Like, he's a bad guy, but he's got his code. He hates, super soldiers. We can trust him, right? And Sam's like, oh, I don't think you can. And he's like, well, I already did break him out. which is pretty funny. So I mean, like the breakout scene was pretty much like, hey, start a riot. While there's a rioting, they won't notice, and you can just slip out in a uniform. So it was pretty standard. Again, it didn't feel like Zemo was even really hiding. He just kind of totally was able to walk around freely. But wouldn't you know it, by the way, they're kind of doing a little bit of retroactive continuity to make him more in line with the comic version. Turns out he's rich. He's a Baron. He's Baron Zemo, baby. And the boys are all together. There we have him behind me. And as I said in the intro, they are just looking dope, aren't they? I mean, throughout this whole episode, especially in some of the later scenes, I mean, I don't know, am I using this right? I'm going to say it and embarrass myself. Fucking Baron Zemo is just dripping. You know, he's got drip. Is that what the kids are saying? He's got swag. There we go. That's slightly less cool, slightly less modern. Oh my god, I feel like my dad. So yeah, that's Baron Zemo, which is pretty cool. He's got a private jet. He's got a butler. Yeah, again, I mean, they're not doing a great job looking for this guy, but whatever. So basically, we have a few cool things here as far as plot stuff goes. And again, this is one of those things that's fan service. It doesn't bug me because it's such a minor thing. But again, you could probably pick at it if you were like, come on, why would that be the case? So it turns out that Bucky's list of like the people he has to make amends with, and actually at one point Zemo stole it off him and had a look through it, is also the same notebook that Cap had in Winter Soldier, where he was trying to make a list of the things he'd missed, which are like, that's cool, but also feels like an unnecessary bit of fan service. Like, why? why is it the same notebook? Like, there's a million different notebooks. Why that one? You know. But anyway, it just seems a bit of strange continuity. It's fine. It's just a bit odd and a little awkward. Again, it's the sort of thing where if you think about it for too long, you're like, why did he do that? That doesn't really make any sense. But it does bring up a fun conversation about Trouble Man from Marvin Gaye, which of course was recommended by Sam to Steve.
Marvin Gaye, 1972 Trouble Man soundtrack. Everything you missed, jammed into one album.
And there's a kind of a discussion on music, which is interesting. And this is where we kind of start to see a different side of Zemo that's pretty entertaining. First of all, the man is woke as fuck. He's like listening to... He's very intellectual and clearly well educated. He's like on about like Marvin Gaye, and he's like, you know, it definitely shows the plight of the African Americans. And then there's another point where like when they're getting ready to go to our next location, they have to dress Sam up as a very well-dressed man, and he goes, only an American would think a fashion-forward black man was a pimp. Which is like, they gave him some of the best lines in this episode. But I really enjoyed that. But it's interesting. So from here, we go to Madripoor. Madripoor is an interesting location, of course. It's from the comics. It's actually mostly an X-Men location, or in the X-Men comics. So I was wondering if this was something they got from the Fox seed. Again, it's so minor, I don't think it really matters. But it's cool. It's kind of like basically sort of a tech... you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a neon kind of city. It looked actually quite like the city in Black Panther. I'm trying to remember, was that Taiwan or Hong Kong? I can't remember, but either way, it was a very cool location. It's an Asian location in the comics, and it definitely had that here. And the basic plan they have is that they're all going to be playing a kind of a character. Zemo is, of course, going to be playing Zemo. Sam is going to be playing a character called Smiling Tiger, who's actually also a comic book character. And then we have we have Bucky, who's going to be playing that he's brainwashed as the Winter Soldier. And they get to this location, and basically the whole section here is dedicated to Power Broker. There's even a bit of graffiti when they enter the club that says Power Broker is watching, which is very ominous. They say he's judge, jury, and executioner, and he basically runs the place. It's funny, the bar scene actually here kind of reminded me of the Star Wars Cantina in a really weird way. I think it's because we had a character also going around with their hood up, which I think we get revealed who it is later on. And we also have someone videotaping what goes down, which is a bit of a fight scene. The Winter Soldier, basically Zemo isn't going to be given any access, and he acts like the Winter Soldier. He's in Winter Soldier mode, and they clear house a little bit, which was pretty cool. But of course it got filmed, so this is going to bite them in the ass at some point, in some way. I thought that something that they didn't necessarily do well here was the kind of what's the structure, I guess, of whatever this was. So they met a character, I think the character was called Shelby, who's not the Power Broker, and she works for the Power Broker. I think she's like the second in command. And basically they have this whole thing. where they're trying to figure out are they the real person, and they're trying to figure out the deal. And I think the deal is basically like, give you some super soldier serum. God damn it! And then you get the Winter Soldier and the code words for him, and that's kind of the idea. And whatever happens anyway, they kind of lose their cover because Sam gets a call from his sister Sarah. Remember her back in episode 1? She's feels like, what about the boat, Sam? Come on, that's your story arc. Nothing about, forget about all the Captain America stuff. Are you going to save the family fishing industry? You know, it's such a weird. I just find a very weird like plot point to just throw in there, and it's obviously going to get the short end of the stick, and it's just going to pay off by at the end of it they'll both be sitting in a boat fishing. I'm going to remember this in this video to see if that pays off. That's my new theory, Tom's theory. Where Sam's going on the boat at the end. So yeah, she gets killed. There's seemingly someone covering them, and basically from there they kind of have to go a little bit on the run. Very briefly, because there seems to be a bounty on their head, and wouldn't you know it, seemingly the person covering them was Agent 13, better known as Sharon Carter. She's back, baby. Emily Van Camp is back as Sharon Carter, another returning character who we last saw in Civil War. And there's a couple of things I want to say about this. She's a totally different character to when we last saw her. When we last saw her, she basically stole some of the gear for the guys who were on the run, so that they could have their Civil War in the airport. And she had to go on the run as well. The last saw her, she gave a kiss to Steve Rogers, which is weird because that's Peggy Carter's niece. That's a little bit weird. I'm glad they don't dwell on that. So like, this is kind of weird, right? She's like totally different now, by the way. She's gone off the grid. She's on the run. She's pissed off at Sam and a couple of the other guys, really. And she's kind of in the whole camp now that heroes are hypocrites. She doesn't believe it. She's jaded and cynical. And the reason she's in Madripoor is that Madripoor has no extradition treaty. And this is the sort of thing now where I'm like, does this actually make sense? So like, let's look at it this way, right? All the other people who were on the run during for breaking the Sokovia Accords in Civil War, they were all kind of pardoned. I mean, like, characters that did much more severe things, like Captain America, like Falcon. All these characters got pardoned, presumably after saving the world from Thanos. And no one was like, hey, Sharon Carter, you're good. It just seems kind of weird. And then it made me think less of Captain America. I'm like, I know you were all on the run, and I know it's been a while, but like, you didn't reach out to her once, check how she was doing. I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm like, I don't know if it fully makes sense. Now, I like the way they're going with this character. I think they actually might be going a different direction again, which we might get to. But it's sort of, again, you might have to sort of suspend your disbelief a little bit in this universe. But, it's a rare kind of slip. And it isn't even a slip. It's just me kind of wondering if it all makes sense in my own head. So this is interesting because it leads to them going to find... I should say, when they spoke to this Shelby character, they found out that the scientist who was making the soldier serum is a guy called Nagel. So they're now on the hunt of Nagel. And this is really cool because we now have our sort of, a ragtag group of heroes, which is Falcon, Winter Soldier, Zemo, and Sharon Carter, which is just such a strange combination of characters that I kind of love it. And in this, they're kind of in freight containers, which is where Nagel is hiding. And we get Sharon Carter kind of... It's really weird. It felt like they basically were like, hey, just let the lads kind of carry the plot forward, and Sharon, you go have your action scene. Which is, I mean... You know what? I was like, get her for Daredevil, man. She was like, this was some Daredevil-esque fighting, like with a bit more of the kind of, judo sort of style that we saw in Winter Soldier. But she was like, how many guys did she take out? She kicked ass. She's basically like a female Winter Soldier without the metal arm. Like, she just cleared house, no problem to her, which was pretty cool to see. She had batons and all that kind of stuff, but it's pretty hardcore. So Sharon Carter, welcome back. It's definitely probably the most I've been interested in this character in general. Normally, it just kind of felt like we need some sort of loose love interest for Captain America, and it never really panned out. So this was probably the best iteration yet, and I'm interested to see where this character goes. Of course, I should say while they're doing this, the lads are talking to Nagel, and Nagel's plan and Nagel's sort of history is interesting. So Nagel, he says, like, after the failure of the Five Winter Soldiers, which is what we saw in Civil War, basically Zemo got to this base and killed them all. He gets picked up by the CIA, and he manages to make the Super Soldier Serum, which is the first in Erskine, and he says it's even better than it was. Then he gets dusted in the blip, and when he comes back, the program was abandoned, which I kind of like that. Again, there's a couple of mentions to the blip in general, and this is sort of why Sam is like, oh well, this is why I wasn't in touch. I was missing for 5 years. It's like, but you did have a bit of time, Sam, that you could have contacted Sharon, you dick. But also at the start we have an ad for the Global Repatriation Council about people who have been kind of blipped. So I do like that they're making the most of this. It wasn't really much of the case in WandaVision, but of course WandaVision was sort of in its own world. So I'm glad they're kind of dealing with consequences of that. I don't want it to be like every single episode and every single piece of media has to be like, oh well, this person got blipped and oh now look what's going on with them. That would just feel a little bit forced. It was kind of like when every property had to be like, oh, remember the attack in New York? So I hope we don't get it for everything. But basically, we find out that Nagel has made 20 serums. Carly stole them, and now that's kind of where we're at. So basically, the Flag Smashers have all the Super Soldier serums and not the Power Broker, which is interesting. This mysterious Power Broker we still know nothing about. Zemo is also, he's so slick, man. He finds a gun stashed under a desk and just shoots the guy. And just after this, a massive explosion occurs. We get full Zemo here, which is just, he's so cool, man. Zemo was the highlight of this, and I hope we see more of Zemo in this. This is why I'd love it something like a Thunderbolts, because this character I really like. I think they found a good balance here between the kind of cold, calculated bad guy of the previous entries, and also, someone that has a bit of personality. He even does a little boogie at one point in Mad Rapport. Again, he has a mask with him. He just throws it on and does some badass action. But again, it didn't feel like it was outside of what was available or achievable for that character. But he just put the mask on. That kind of, again, that was one of those fan servicey things where I'm like, why? Why did he put the mask on though? And to hide your identity, I guess, for like 2 seconds. It just didn't make much sense to me. I also wanted... This is in this action scene, and I don't know why. This is just a note I wrote. I don't know why I wrote it down. Bucky does what Arnold does in Commando. At the end of Commando, where he throws the pipe and it goes through someone. I was hoping he'd make a pun. He didn't.
Let off some steam, Bennett.
So that's kind of a shame. But then Zemo shows up in a very flash car. This Zemo is all style, man. Like I said, Zemo has drip. Like I awkwardly said, and probably used wrong. Zemo is dripping. He's got ice. I'm embarrassed for myself as well. That was just a moment of silence reflecting on who I become. And we get a nice little callback with them being like, "Oh, move your seat up." "Oh, I'm not going to move my seat up." Ha ha ha. Remember that scene? And then Sharon Carter they go off and Sharon Carter heads away. But she does say sort of a thing like, we've got a big problem, and she's meeting with someone saying this. So, the question is, what is going on with Sharon Carter? What's her deal? Is she lying? Could she be the Power Broker? Ooh, I don't know. That's a Tom theory, by the way. Could Sharon Carter be the Power Broker? Could the big problem be that they no longer have someone to make the Super Soldier Serum? I don't know. I don't know what you do with this character other than that. I find it weird. I think you don't write this character off if they're not going to have some big payoff. I don't know. And I think it would be really interesting to have a character that was basically a good person that turned evil because she was basically forgotten about by the Avengers. And it would also sort of prove Zemo's point, which is interesting. But again, whether they go that way, I doubt it. But it would be kind of cool. But again, what do you really do with Sharon Carter as a character? Yeah, there's only so much you can do with them. I mean, especially now that Steve Rogers is dead, or not dead, old and gone. He's not in the picture anymore. So I don't know. I find that interesting. Is it going to happen? Probably not. But it does bring the question of who the power broker is going to be. So I would do kind of from there want to go to some of the lesser characters who didn't get much time. We got a bit more information on our Flag Smashers, our Carly character. It's strange. They kind of did a thing where they tried to make her a bit more sympathetic, and then they were just like, nah, never mind. So the character, first of all, they said they kind of wanted to be a teacher, and it kind of sounds like they're doing this for, an ultimate goal at the end of the day. And it's sort of weird. It's one of those things where, like, one person's freedom fighter versus another person's terrorist kind of thing, because she talks about her motives later on, and it does kind of feel like, oh well, she has her reasons, as it were. But essentially, see, one of her friends, I thought it was her mom first, but I think it's just a friend, dies, and it seems like maybe this is one of the reasons they were seeing the things to help people who were sick. I think I read somewhere online that she had tuberculosis. I'm not sure where that came from. Maybe it was a reference that went over my head. I'm not sure. But yeah, they robbed someone for 6 months of supplies in a following scene. And then, much to the surprise, I don't know the character who's talking to her in this video version behind me. But he seems like he doesn't recognize her. Like this, like Harley is basically going more villainous than he recognized her as. Yeah, that she's more villainous than he first realized. Because after robbing the supplies, they blow up the building, and he's like, "What the hell? There was people still in there." And she was like, "This is the only language they understand." So, is she going more villainous now that this person has died? We don't know, but it does seem weird. I just find it very odd to be like, they're sympathetic, but also, this person's now dead and now they're villainous. So it's like, that seems very rushed, in my opinion. But I don't know. I enjoy it. Again, the Flag Smashers, they're fine. I just haven't really got anything. It feels like an unnecessary inclusion for me so far. I'd be interested to see how it pans out, but it does just feel like, hey, we need people they can beat up, throw them in there. And now they're trying to give them a bit of characterization. I'm not sure it fully worked for me. At least, there's plenty of people in the show already. I feel like they're not entirely necessary yet, but there we go. Also, as I mentioned at the start of the episode, we started with John Walker and Lamar Hoskins, and I brushed over them because they're barely in the episode. One thing I do want to point out, and I couldn't do it last week, but in the video version there, I'll move myself out of the way. If you look at Hoskins' outfit, he has kind of the outline of a star, and I said that last week, and I couldn't find a photo of it, but if you look at the costume design, again, it's kind of paying tribute to his comic book origin as Battlestar. We start the episode with them, and they're basically raiding the facility or the location where Carly was hiding out, as we saw in the last episode, and the person is recruiting him up. He spits in his face, and John Walker's like, "Do you know who I am?" And he's like, "Yep." So it's interesting. It's cool that he's like a bit of a harsher Captain America, and I do wonder if him not getting respect here is going to lead to him taking a super soldier serum down the road. Who knows? As I said last week, in the comics, they got it from the Power Broker. Who is a Power Broker? We don't know yet. Again, we have 3 episodes left. We're about halfway through now, so plenty of time for that to happen. But I don't know. Again, I didn't think I'd be saying this, but I kind of want more episodes at the moment. I feel like 6 episodes means it's going to be a little bit rushed, but who knows? It feels like this story could be a lot bigger than it is at the moment, and I don't know. Yeah. Aside from that, we should probably only. Oh yeah, sorry. I meant to. There was another scene. Is what I was trying to say there. John Walker and Lamar Hoskins go to the prison they broke out in, and basically they're kind of using a sort of nefarious means to investigate it a little bit. Basically, they're just like they just kind of the guy's asked like basically like, hey, you think that they broke him out? And Lamar Hoskins is kind of like they're walking down away, and they're kind of like, this is not, we're not doing this the right way. He says, if we get the job done, do you really think they're going to sweat us on the how? Which is interesting. Kind of bears, you could probably draw some comparisons between modern Cap having like traditional values of law enforcement and John Walker having more modern ones or misconceptions that people might have about the police. It's like, as long as we get the result, who cares how we do it? Interesting. It's nice that they're giving a bit of edge. They haven't really gone full over the top villain with him yet, which I enjoy. But it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. Now, the thing at the end of the episode is probably what everyone's going to be talking about, and I really, really like this. And again, The question is, are they introducing so many plot threads here that there's not a way they can pay it all off satisfyingly? I don't know. I hope this has a more definitive ending than something like WandaVision, where it's like, and we'll see how that pays out later. I hope this has a more definitive ending, but we shall see. So the way it ends is that the guys are kind of investigating, and Bucky notices a ball on the floor, and I was kind of like, what is that? And then he notices another one. I assume they have a purpose. They're these, like, remember in Black Panther where vibranium could do everything, and they had those beads. It's kind of like that, and wouldn't you know it? Basically, Bucky's like, "What took you so long?" And behind him is a member of the Dora Milaje. More specifically, it's Ayo, not like Rocky, who is the second in command of the Dora Milaje, played by Florence Kasumba. She's under was it Okoye? Played by Danny Gurira. And basically they're like, what are you doing here? And she's like, we want Zemo, which is very, very subtly hinted at earlier, where they're like, basically, like, he did this, he blew up the bomb, he killed King T'Chaka. So that's where we leave it. Interesting. I'm kind of worried, that a lot of the episodes are like, introduce this character, deal with this plot thread. Like this episode, it's like, oh, what about Sharon Carter? Oh, what about Wakanda? So who knows how that's going to pay out. What I did like as well is that Zemo is stuck by them. Like, he's had opportunities where he could flee and turn on them, and he hasn't. And I like that. Is this going to lead to a kind of an anti-hero? I assume he is probably eventually going to turn on them, but it is interesting to see. But that was our episode. Again, I really liked it. I liked it for the character stuff. I liked the Sharon Carter stuff. I liked Baron Zemo. The plot, again, is, it kind of feels like they're adding layers here just to drag it out at times. They're adding a lot of plot threads that I don't think are going to have a really satisfying ending. But we shall see. The big question is who's the power broker? As I said, could it be Sharon Carter? Maybe. I don't know. She did ask at one point about the new Captain America, so could they team up at some point and she gives him powers if she's the power broker, which she probably isn't. I mean, let's be honest. But I don't know. I think the thing is, right, and this is what I mean about plot threads. The fact that they didn't introduce the power broker, and they didn't spend time maybe giving him some development, or her, does that mean it's a character we already know? That's what I'm wondering. It could be even like someone like Thunderbolt Ross. And again, if you really wanted to get to Red Hulk, you could probably use some of the super soldiers here. They did talk about Red Skull. A Red Skull was morphed by the super soldier serum and turned red. Maybe that's a total reach, which of course you have to do when you make these kind of videos every now and then. The big question then is what will happen with Zemo. When's he going to turn villainous? Is he going back to prison at the end of this? We would assume so. I mean, if Sharon Carter has to be on the run for doing basically nothing, surely he's going to do it. If nothing else, we're blowing up the EU, killing a king, and then just breaking out of prison. Actually, breaking out of prison, I should have started with that. That was really a lesser of his crimes. What's going to happen with Wakanda? This is kind of interesting because this is the first insight into Wakanda we've gotten in Phase 4 so far. Obviously, we had the unfortunate passing of Chadwick Boseman. And obviously, this probably would have been planned long before that. So, are we going to get insight into where Wakanda's at now? Probably not. I imagine they'll leave that to Ryan Coogler for Black Panther 2. So the question is, what do you do with that? Like, is Zemo's not going to end up in Wakanda, we assume? So really, it's kind of interesting to see where that plot thread goes. And how do you give it a satisfying wrap-up is what I mean there. I don't know. That's going to be interesting, though. Could we see Bucky going back to Wakanda? Seems pointless, but I don't know. And that's kind of what leads to the big question in general, which is, where is this all going? We assume we're going to have a new Captain America at the end of this. That seems like the whole purpose of the show, but it seems like it's sort of been pushed to the background. Certainly in this episode it was. Now, I'm okay with that. It's sort of basically just, let's, figure out who's making the MacGuffin, the super soldier serum, and all that, but I don't know. It feels like there's a lot of plot threads going on here. And it feels like they're not necessarily pulling on the right one. I should mention as well, and this might factor into the power broker thing. And this, oh man, I'm getting flashbacks to WandaVision here. They said there's a major actor in episode 5. I swear to Christ, if it's Paul Bettany again, I'm going to blow my fucking head off. Who is it? Is it someone we know? I assume the fact that it said major actor, it's someone we know. I don't think they're like bringing in a new character with a new actor would be kind of pointless. So could that be the power broker reveal? Possibly. That kind of implies to me that it is someone we know, but I don't know. Interesting stuff. Again, I enjoyed the episode, but let me know, what did you think of this latest episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier? Do you think we've already met the power broker, and if so, who do you think it is? What do we think is going to happen with the Dora Milaje? When is Zemo going to turn heel? I said he's already a villain, so who knows when he's going to show his true self. But anyway, that was episode 3 of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I very much enjoyed it. Let me know what you thought of it in the comments below. Please like and subscribe, and come back next week when we do episode 4, because remember, I'll be watching. Take care.